In the mid-1800s, world trade moved faster than the routes that carried it. In the United States, new ports on the Pacific suddenly mattered, but ships from the Atlantic still faced a brutal choice: a long voyage around South America or an expensive overland haul across a continent. Every mile burned time, money, and lives, so merchants and officials fixated on a simple idea: a man-made shortcut through the narrow waist of the Americas. See, on maps, the isthmus looked like a problem begging for a solution. Central America narrowed to a thin strip where the Atlantic and Pacific came closest, and that closeness turned into a strategic temptation. A canal there promised fewer weeks at sea, lower insurance costs, and quicker access to Asian markets. For a growing US Navy, it also meant something bigger: the ability to shift warships between oceans without circumnavigating a continent. But in the 1850s, that promise stayed mostly on paper. The region offered mountains, swamps, and rivers that refused to cooperate, and travellers reported sickness that could wipe out crews before the work even began. Investors still imagined profits, yet no one had proved the route could be built, supplied, and kept alive. The canal became an obsession of commerce and power, urgent in theory, unreachable in practice. In the 1850s, the first real test of the isthmus idea arrived in steel and timber, a railroad across Panama. It did not cut a channel through land. It carried people and cargo over it. The goal was simple: save weeks compared with sailing around South America. When the tracks finally linked the two oceans, the result proved the shortcut was not a fantasy. It already worked, just not the way dreamers had imagined. That success brought pressure immediately. The route turned into a conveyor belt for mail, gold, and passengers rushing between coasts. But every mile of construction had demanded a fight against the terrain and the calendar. Rain swelled rivers, washed out embankments, and slowed deliveries of supplies. What looked short on a map behaved like a trap on the ground. The railroad showed the value of Panama, and it also revealed the true price of operating there. The deadliest obstacle was not distance, it was disease. Workers fell sick in large numbers, and the project's workforce never felt stable for long. Keeping labourers fed, housed, and moving became a constant emergency, not routine planning. Even after the line opened, the railroad's operators learned that the isthmus punished any delay and magnified every mistake. The lesson landed hard. A canal would not just need engineering, it would need survival. In the 1880s, France stepped forward and turned the canal dream into a headline project. The country's star engineer, Ferdinand de Lesseps, brought fame from the Suez Canal and sold Panama as the next triumph. He pushed a simple promise: a sea-level canal straight through with no locks to slow ships down. Investors listened, newspapers celebrated, money poured in fast. The plan sounded clean on paper: cut a trench from ocean to ocean and let the water meet in the middle. That idea carried enormous confidence because it matched what people thought modern engineering could do. French promoters raised funds through public stock offerings, drawing in ordinary families as well as wealthy backers. A private company formed to build it. The world watched, expecting a quick victory. Work began with big machines, big payrolls, and big expectations. Survey lines turned into excavation sites, and early progress fed the belief that Panama could be treated like a larger version of Suez. But the sea-level choice locked France into the hardest possible path, removing staggering amounts of earth and controlling unruly terrain, all while trying to keep investors confident. In the 1880s, faith drove the project forward. By the late 1880s, the French project stopped looking like a triumph and started looking like a trap. The workforce shrank as yellow fever and malaria kept killing faster than new men arrived. Hospitals filled, schedules slipped, and confidence drained away. Every delay raised costs, and every rainy season erased progress. The sea level plan demanded perfect conditions. Panama never offered them. The canal did not defeat the jungle. The jungle defeated the timetable. Then the math broke down. Engineers underestimated how much earth had to move, and they misjudged how violently the ground could collapse once it was cut open. Landslides buried equipment and forced crews to dig the same sections again and again. Mud and water turned neat drawings into constant rework. The deeper they went, the harder it became to keep the trench stable. What sounded simple to investors required control over nature the technology of the time did not provide. As losses mounted, the money story turned ugly. To keep cash flowing, promoters leaned on fresh investors and political influence, even as the project's prospects dimmed. When the finances finally cracked, scandal followed. Lawsuits, investigations, and reputations ruined. The company collapsed into bankruptcy, and the grand French bid ended in fragments. Excavated cuts, rusting machines, half-finished plans, and a hard-earned warning about Panama's realities. It was unfinished work, waiting for a new nation to take the risk. By the early 1900s, the United States stopped treating an Isthmian canal as a distant idea and treated it as a national decision. A shortcut between oceans promised commercial speed, but it also promised military reach. Congress weighed costs, timelines, and control. Then a simple question turned into a fight with real consequences. Where exactly would America cut through? Nicaragua or Panama? Nicaragua looked tempting on paper. Its route used large natural lakes, and many Americans believed it offered an easier dig and a cleaner break from the failed French effort. Panama, though, had something Nicaragua did not: partly finished excavation, a proven railroad across the isthmus, and the possibility of buying French assets instead of starting from scratch. Each route built a camp of supporters, and the decision became a political contest. Lobbying hardened into pressure. Backers of Nicaragua pushed the idea of a safer, more straightforward canal, and they tried to make Panama sound like a graveyard of mistakes. Supporters of Panama answered with a different argument: speed. They pointed to equipment already on the ground and to years of work that could be reused. Inside Washington, the canal vote stopped being abstract. It became a choice that would reshape a whole region. In 1903, the United States had chosen Panama in principle, but it still needed legal control of the land. Panama was not a country yet. It was a province of Colombia, and the canal deal had to go through the Colombian government. A treaty was negotiated, but Colombia rejected it, judging the terms too costly to its sovereignty. The route looked ready. The politics slammed the door. That rejection changed everything. Panamanian leaders and business interests already wanted separation, and now they had a powerful reason to move fast. The United States backed the breakaway, and the timing was precise. Before Colombia could reassert control, Panama declared independence. American naval forces supported the new reality by blocking Colombian troops from crossing to crush the revolt. A province became a new republic in days. With independence secured, the canal question flipped overnight from stuck to solved. Panama quickly signed a treaty with the United States that granted Washington control over a strip of territory called the Canal Zone, along with broad rights to build, administer, and defend the canal. The project finally had a clear path forward, but the price was obvious. Many in Latin America and Colombia saw it as a U.S. power play. In 1904, the Americans arrived with a hard lesson already learned. Digging did not fail first. People did. Yellow fever and malaria had turned Panama into a place where strong workers vanished in weeks and whole crews refused to stay. This time, the breakthrough came before the biggest machines. The United States treated disease control as construction work, and it became the project's first real foundation. Doctors and engineers built a campaign around a new idea that sounded almost too simple. Mosquitoes spread the diseases. That changed everything. They drained standing water, oiled puddles, and cleared brush where insects bred. They screened windows, fumigated buildings, and pushed rules that reached into daily life. It felt strict, even intrusive, but it aimed at one outcome: stop the bites, stop the deaths. The results came in numbers, not speeches. Yellow fever cases collapsed until the disease stopped haunting the work camps, and malaria, while stubborn, became something managers could plan around instead of fear. Fewer funerals meant steadier payrolls and crews that did not break apart. Panama did not turn safe overnight. It turned workable. And that single shift made the rest of the canal possible. With disease pushed back, the United States faced the next argument. What kind of canal even made sense? A sea-level trench sounded clean on paper, but Panama's rivers and rainfall promised constant floods and endless digging. So the plan pivoted. Engineers committed to a lock canal, lifting ships up to an artificial lake and then lowering them back down. It traded one giant cut for a system of controlled steps. That choice reshaped everything that followed. To make the lock plan work, crews had to break the isthmus at its spine. The Culebra Cut became the hardest mile-by-mile fight of the project because the earth refused to stay put. Rain softened slopes, landslides buried tracks, and freshly dug ground slid right back into the trench. The response sounded simple and proved brutal. Dig again, widen the cut, haul more spoil away, and keep the trains moving no matter how often the hill collapsed. The lock canal also demanded a new source of power and stability: water. Gatun Dam rose across the Chagres River, backed up into Gatun Lake, and turned a wild river into a controlled reservoir. Then came the locks, massive chambers where ships floated in, gates closed, and water levels changed like an elevator. Excavations stopped being scattered, digging, and became a factory system. Steam shovels loading rail cars on schedule, spoil dumped by the ton, and an entire landscape reshaped to one engineered rhythm. In 1914, the canal finally opened, and the map of world shipping effectively changed overnight. Instead of circling South America, ships now crossed the isthmus in hours. That shortcut cut weeks off many routes, lowered fuel and crew costs, and made some ports suddenly more valuable than others. Trade flows shifted toward this new passage because time started mattering even more than distance. For the United States, the canal did more than move cargo. It reshaped naval planning. Warships that once faced an exhausting, risky voyage around Cape Horn now moved between oceans through a controlled corridor. That meant the Navy concentrated power faster, responded to crises sooner, and defended both coasts with the same fleet. The canal turned geography into a tool, and that tool belonged to Washington. That control carried a political message across the hemisphere. A canal run by the United States made nearby countries live with a new reality. American interests sat astride the region's most strategic choke point. The canal boosted commerce for many nations, but it also anchored US influence in Central America and the Caribbean. It was a trade artery, and it was an instrument of power. For decades after the canal opened, Panamanians pressed against a basic reality. A strip of their country stayed under US control, run like an American outpost. That pressure built year after year until it forced a political answer. In 1977, new treaties set a timetable that ended the old arrangement. The canal zone's days looked numbered. The question stopped being whether control changed and became when. The deadline arrived at the end of 1999. On that day, the canal passed fully to Panama, and the world watched to see what happened when the United States no longer ran its most famous shortcut. The outcome looked simple but proved historic. Ships kept moving, tolls kept coming, and Panama treated the canal like a national utility and a national business at once. Control shifted, but dependence stayed. Then Panama pushed further. It expanded the canal with larger locks, built to handle bigger container ships and bulk carriers that global trade demanded. The canal became a modern choke point, managed by Panamanians, but pulled by worldwide pressures. More traffic meant more water, and drought threatened the system's limits. The canal still promised speed, but now it faced a new question. How long could it deliver that promise under strain?